This is Casey. You probably recognize me from Coaching with Casey. I am here today with some coaches. We're going to try a new thing called Coach Talk with the Coaches, where we're going to meet every so often. We'll be on here live and talking about the topic for the month. So we're going to go ahead and talk about self-care today. Before we do that, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves and then we'll get into it. So I'll go first, I guess. I'm Casey. I am from Iowa, and I am the lead coach for the US. And usually I'm on here on Tuesday nights, Central Time, for Coaching with Casey. So you've probably seen me on that. And who would like to go next?
I'll go. Hi, everyone. My name is Zulma. I am Vino and Vision's global lead coach. And along with Casey, we get to have the enormous, wonderful privilege of leading our Vino and Vision's coaches globally. And we have a really nice representation of that here today with us for our theme of self-care and how to practice that within our everyday lives. Normally, we have our coaches meeting. We have a couple a month, and we've decided that we want you to be a part of them too. So that's what we're doing today. It is a very relaxed conversation with the coaches and just sharing what we do in our day-to-day and learning from each other. So here I leave you with Brandy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandy Morgan. I am the associate coach for North Carolina here at Vino and Vision. And I'm really excited for this new process that we're doing of having this conversation. And I'll pass it to Sallah.
Hi, thank you, ladies. My name is Sallah. I am the regional coach for Europe and Asia. Of course, for Vino and Vision, I'm excited to be here and I'm excited to connect with all of you and my fellow coaches. And today we are excited to bring in some self-care vibes. I'm looking forward to. So I am just one of your chapter coaches, but I'm happy to connect anyway.
Very well. Thank you.
The chatter coach, because people love your energy when you're talking.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was wonderful. It's such a great thing to be able to connect no matter where we are and talk about important things, especially the topic of self-care. I am a holistic health practitioner. That is my day-to-day as well. So I'm all about the whole person approach to all the aspects of life. And self-care is a piece of that pie. So for us to be here sitting together and talking about how we do that is very important, because talking about it does not mean we're doing it perfectly. In fact, it may be because we need to have this conversation. We need to have the reminder that maybe we're not doing it as great as we think we are. So with that in mind, can anyone of you share with me, how do you self-care?
I'll jump in on that. So I look at self-care as a form of advocacy. So some of the things that I do personally for self-care is creating healthy boundaries within my relationships, whether they're familiar relationships or, extended friendship relationships. Also, setting intentions and using affirmations. And my ultimate favorite self-care is soaking in a bathtub with candles and herbs and salts and meditation music in the background, so that I can really just go within myself and find that calmness when everything around me seems to be chaotic.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. You often go ahead, Nicole.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to jump in. Go ahead, Zulma.
Go ahead. Actually, I think there's a little bit of feedback in my audio. I'm going to switch rooms, so go ahead while I do that.
Okay, perfect. Just reframing back to what Brandy just said, thank you for that contribution. I feel like it's really important for us having to talk about this conversation. And so most of the time people do not like to talk about self-care because they're scared to be vulnerable. They do not want to talk about things that is within, things that is going to help you to maintain their energy and their sanity. To me, as soon as I hear self-care, I straight away think about my sanity and my energy. And holistically, to me, what helps me, it's having to be honest to myself. Self-care to me means mind, body, and soul. So every day, what am I doing to contribute to my mind's development, my body, and my soul? It's very broad. So self-care means these three for me: mind, body, and soul. So what do I do every day to contribute to the goodness of my mind, my body, and my soul? Thank you.
I like how you made that connection between the three because that is important. It's not just about what you do on the outside for yourself. It's what are you doing on the inside as well. What's creating that balance for you? Zulma, what do you do for self-care?
Oh, goodness. I am a deep believer in the ability to be able to tap into the inner work that is required to recognize what it is that I need right now. And lately, I've been practicing more of what do I want as well. I think oftentimes we have come to believe that it's not okay to want. So finding that balance between the need and want, and being okay with recognizing that wanting is okay, that I give myself permission to want to do things for myself, and that it's not selfish, right? Because we often connect self-care with selfishness, and especially as busy as we are, we wear so many hats. If we are mothers or parents, we can go into that mindset of, I don't have time, I have too many things to do. And if I do take the time, then perhaps I'm being selfish. So my favorite form of self-care is being really in tune with my needs and my wants, so that I don't feel like I have to be validated to take that time for myself. That's step one for me. And then from then, it could be anything like Sallah mentioned, that mind, body, soul approach, body, mind, and soul approach to addressing those needs and wants. And that may look different every single time. It can be, I've identified that it is a body physical need or want. So I take care of that. It may be more of a mindset only. And so then I have a set of tools, right? And within Vino and Vision, we have access to those tools, such as like mindfulness. And you mentioned affirmations, Brandy. I also, in my holistic health practice, have another set of tools. For example, software that provides biofeedback to identify those things that are really going to focus on my needs and my wants, and so that I can have the holistic approach to taking care of what I need, versus just kind of having that symptom addressing approach that we all know doesn't work. So that's my favorite kind of self-care, but that is my everyday life. And like I said before, when we are talking about these things, it does not mean that we are perfect at it. It doesn't matter if we're in the wellness industry. It does not mean that because you are automatically going to be like, the perfect bill of health walking every single day. We can have something come to our lives that's just going to knock us off our feet. And it does not matter how many affirmations we've said yesterday. Every single day changes. Every single day our energy is fluctuating. So we have to be very mindful. I have to be very mindful of how things around me are affecting me, so that I'm able to self-care for myself. How about you, Casey?
I love how you went into the whole mindset. For me, it all starts with mindset. For many, many years, I really struggled with self-care because of that idea of thinking that it was selfish. And so getting out of that mindset was really key. And I think one of the things that people struggle with thinking that self-care is selfish is just the mindset of it, because of the society that we're in, we have kind of, it's the whole scarcity versus abundance mindset. And so shifting from, we often think that if we are giving ourselves self-care, that's selfish and that's taking away from other people. And that's a scarcity mindset. But if we think of it in an abundance mindset, then it's different, because if we actually take care of ourselves, then we're able to give so much more to everybody else. So it's just that idea of that you can't give, you can't give from an empty cup. So if you fill your cup first, then you can give from that. And so for me, once I got a hold of that idea, I was able to change my mindset. And I think that's a really important place to start. And then just being mindful every day, because situations change, everything changes. So it's important to check in with myself to see how things are going. One thing recently that I found that really helps, and with my schedule change, I'm able to do this, is that I go for a walk every day. And once it gets cold outside here in Iowa, because it gets really cold, I guess I'll have to become a mall walker or something, I don't know. But I put my headphones on, I listen to music, and it's just whatever, I have such an eclectic taste in music, it just depends. But no matter what, I'm walking, I'm in nature, so I'm taking care of my body, but at the same time, I'm listening to music, and then I'm reflecting the whole time while I'm walking. And it's just such a refreshing thing for me to do. I'm able to check in with myself, and I'm taking care of my body and my mind at the same time. So that's kind of my favorite one that I do on a regular basis that kind of helps me stay balanced.
Can I interject for a moment?
Interesting.
Both of you guys speak, it kind of brought that that saying that they tell you when you get on a plane, if something happens, put on your mask before you put on somebody else's mask. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, how do we really expect to be able to take care of the next person, whether it be our spouse, our parents, our children, co-workers, whatever that case might be. So I actually have a question for Zulma and Casey, and that's, what are some of the things that you guys did to help you gain your new self-care routines? What switched to make you think that, it's not selfish and it is okay for me to practice self-care? Was it a particular moment? Was it something that somebody said, or it just kind of one of those moments where a light bulb clicks on in your head and you're like, you know what? I need this. I deserve this. So what was that point for you guys?
You want to
go? Thank you, Casey. I think for me, it's the accruance of life. I have some background experience with chronic pain. When I identified the root cause of the psychosomatic aspect that I was living in my life at a certain period of my life, today I can look back and say my self-care is non-negotiable, because if I don't self-care, I cannot be here. I cannot do the things that I do. And so therefore it eliminates any space that such a negative emotion, such as selfishness, in the negative aspect that could come into the equation. There's no space for it, because if I don't do what I need to do to take care of myself, in fact, can actually be self, because I will be denying myself the divine right that I have to live a purposeful and fulfilling life as much as I can, right? Because when we talk about self-care, it's important to mention that it's about your quality of life. It's not a luxury. It's not a luxury to you can go to a spa and spend hundreds of dollars on beauty treatments, etc. There's nothing wrong with that, but this is not what we're talking about. We are talking about taking care of your body, taking care of your soul, taking care of your mind, and connecting with all of those things in a way that gives you better quality of life. So for me, it's that deep rooted sentiment of, if I don't do this, the opposite will cost me more. Therefore, I need to invest in myself in the way that I do without any reservation to feelings of selfishness in the way that will make me feel like I'm doing something wrong. There is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to be able to do more or wanting more for yourself, and to be able to then show up in that better version of yourself because you did the work, because you did the things you needed to do. Is my audio okay? I kind of hear a little bit again. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead, Kate.
Okay, so for me, it all goes back to, like, there was a specific, it's been a process, but there is a certain time I can identify as what started that. And that started with realizing what boundaries were and that I needed them. And if I'm being honest, it's only been like 6 years ago that this happened. Up until then, like, I had no concept of boundaries. It was just always about what other people wanted, what other people needed. And I'm very in tune with like other people's emotions and, you know, other people's needs. And I really focused on that a lot. And it got to a point to where I was allowing certain people in my life that had narcissistic tendencies. And it was a really bad situation. And finally it got to a point to where, like, a breaking point. And when I got to that point, the universe sent me a gift and a curse at the same time. I was in a car accident and I hit my head and had a brain injury for a while. And so it took me like 6 months to heal this. And I had to go through, like, I had to teach my brain how to see correctly and stuff. Again, I had to go to therapy for that. And so through this time, it was just a really, not just reteaching my brain and my eyes, like, to work together to see again, but also teaching my brain and doing the inner work on a spiritual level of taking a look at myself and how I had not been setting boundaries. And it was kind of like, oh my gosh, boundaries are a thing. Like that's not, I mean, I've heard people talk about them and stuff, but like, it was just never a real thing to me. And so once I was able to get a grasp of that, it was a total life-changing thing for me to be able to go through finding out what boundaries are. And then I had to work through, like, once I found out what boundaries were, not blocking everybody out after that. So it's like, then I had to work through that process, because once not having boundaries and then having them, it was such a contrasting type feeling, and so having to, it's like, kind of like learning a new skill of any kind, I guess. So it's been a process, but that's what started me on that. And once I had that mindset shift of the boundaries, then that's what gave me the space and allowed all of these other, allowed me to consider and think about and get to the point of being able to do the inner work. And I'm just going to call it inner work, because I mean, self-care is, yes, it is the outside things. And those are things I was good at. Like, I could go, like, if I was feeling stressed, I could go get a massage, or I could take a bath, or I could, go exercise or whatever. Those are the obvious things. Those are the outside things that people often think about with self-care. But the inner work has to come too. And so for me, it was boundaries. For other people, it might be something else, but that's where mine started.
Thank you for sharing that, Casey. That's an amazing story when you can actually, like, pinpoint the moment where you realize, okay, this isn't working for me, and now I need to do something else. I hope I'm not taking over anything, Zulma. So Sallah, you had mentioned previously, that it's about all three stages, right? The mind, body, and spirit. Do you have different forms of self-care for each of those things? Are there certain things that you do for like your spiritual self-care? Are there certain things that you do for your physical self-care? And then, are there certain steps that you take for your mental self-care?
Ah, I've heard so much things. It so resonate with, and I'm sure those watching will kind of resonate with us because I feel like we always constantly in this journey together. But it's good that we're having this conversation because it's not very common, and it's as we coaches, that's what we are here to do, to talk about the difficulties and the common. Doesn't mean that, like Zulma said, that we are perfect or we have it figured it out. But yeah, to me, self-care having to divide it into three: my mind, my body, and my soul. Um, this is where we are not perfect. We're human beings. It's more about the hierarchy of needs, I would call it, because at the end of the day, it's like having your daily management of your routine, your work, your relationships, whatever it may be. It requires some level of thinking, sitting back, and management. And self-care, it's still the same because every day to me, I have to question myself to basically to say, what have I done today to contribute to my mind? Something positive in my mind, something that will help me to really make sure my sanity is intact. So from there, I'll have to check with myself, another self-management. What have I done today towards my soul? And for each one of them, I mean, we have routines. And as coaches, doesn't mean like the routines that we take are the perfect routine. Of course, if it works for you, it does work for you. But at least it's all trial and error. So to me, if I say I used to, not used to, I am quite good at it. Like Casey says, we think about the outside a lot and not forget about the inside. So if I have to say body, mind, and soul, what I say, to me, my mind always is on the top of the list. And then we kind of neglect the others all of the time. You be like, yeah, I've got this figured out. I've got this figured out. And you become so good at managing your mindset and your emotions and your intelligence and how you deal with people. And then at some point you forget about your body. You need to take care of your body. You need to take care of your connection. That's the energy, your soul, whatever it is, that higher being, whether it's, whatever God anybody shares, or if it's meditation, whatever you believe in, that is that connection with your higher being. So to me, is setting up that routine to question myself, what have I done today? Will it be meditation? Will it be prayers? Will it be just me relaxing? Will it be me reflecting on my day and meditating? With that, silence. I need silence, so it does work for me. The noise, I can't concentrate or think or have any connection spiritually when there is noise. And as human beings, I understand we are too scared of being alone. We always want to be connecting to people. We always want to think. Our mind is always at work. But hey, it's okay to numb everything out. Switch off everything and have that spiritual connection with yourself. So that's one of my routines. And with my body kind of things, with that, it requires a lot of work. I'm not the most active person, like physically, because I'm so busy with all the things. So sometimes you feel like, oh, you're neglecting yourself and all that. But as tiny as it is, I'm like, okay, I need to go for a walk. At least it will give me the satisfaction to say, oh, I've done something today towards my body. That's it. So it's this little bit tiny routines that I put in daily, like going for a walk or just picking up the call phone and doing anything as small as that. That's it. My mind as well, the same thing. what do I need to learn today? What what do I need to figure out? And based on my environment, I take it as an information. Whatever comes in, I know this information for me to take in and just to see how best I will. So like Casey said, it's not selfish or selfless, or it's having to put ourselves in this state of lack, like you feel bad. Oh, if I think about myself or look after myself, I am so selfish and all that. But not really. You cannot serve anybody from a Oprah says that all the time. From a half cup fill, like I am not okay. I would be so hypocrite to myself trying to get somebody else to be okay serving you. So it has to come from us as coaches. So Brandy, thanks for that correction. But those 3 branches are my mantra to my self-care, and I have to assess that on a daily, regular basis. I might change the routine, whatever works for me, and whatever just will keep my sanity vibing. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was
Wow.
great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. There's a few things that came to mind as you were sharing that, Sallah. You mentioned a lot of important things, but one of them that really stands out for me is balance, because we talk about the different things that we have to do, the different spaces we have to show up in, etc. And keeping balance can be quite difficult. When we do not, then obviously there'll be deficiencies in that mind, body, spirit, soul balance within our life. So what are some things that you do, all of you, on a daily basis to try to maintain that important balance? We've mentioned we're not perfect. Will it ever be perfect where we say, oh, I keep this perfect balance every day? Probably not going to happen. But as we go through our day and we face different things that come to us, how do you do it? And once you guys share all of yours, I'll tell you mine. Any of you can go.
I'll leave the ladies go first. Them 2 ones.
Balance is such like it's a hard topic, because you do things thinking that you're creating balance, and then somehow something gets thrown in there and you kind of teeter off balance. So it's like walking a tightrope, right? You gotta watch your steps. So one thing I do is try not to be too hard on myself. If I don't stick to the routine, if I happen to meditate for only 3 minutes versus 10 one day, not to beat myself up and think that I am doing something wrong or less than because I didn't reach that goal for the day. Just giving myself grace, allowing myself to be human, to acknowledge the fact that not everything's going to work out the way that we plan. I mean, does anything really work out the way that we plan it? Plans are, I think, meant to be broken and mixed up. One of my friends said, when we make plans, God laughs at us. And I thought that was kind of cute that she said that, because I definitely feel like I'm learning to be okay with the discomfort of not having everything in place all the time, and being okay with that. So, mentally and spiritually, I do things like meditate. I try to practice yoga. I try to make time for myself to read and research and do the things that bring me joy, but also increase my intellect and that just make me feel good about myself. So finding balance for me is creating space for myself, saying it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not always, you know, sometimes we reach our goals, but not in the ways that we anticipate. And reminding myself of that is that, you know, things aren't always going to go as planned, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to reach my destination if I'm not following this perfect plan step by step. So just accepting my humanity is what really helps me keep things in perspective and keep things balanced.
Okay, awesome. Brandy, I love how you were focusing on just accepting your humanity. I think that's something that we all struggle with for whatever reason. And just accepting ourselves, that's something that that I try to do as well, is just reminding myself that I'm you know, I'm only human. I can only do so much. And I used to really struggle with perfectionism to the point of causing me like an anxiety disorder to that point. And I've been able to overcome that to some extent. And I think a lot of that comes down to my mindset of being more accepting of myself at the same time as being flexible, offering myself not an excuse, but an opportunity to realize that, you know, we can be flexible, because you never know what life's going to throw at you, and you have to be able to pivot. And just because we have one thing planned doesn't mean that if it doesn't go the way that we want it to, doesn't mean it's the end of the world. And maybe there's a better way or a different way, or maybe there's a different road we need to take even. And so just, you know, for me, being able to just stop and check in with myself, and I don't tend to look at it balance as like, I wouldn't say stop and check in with myself every day, but like every week. I think it's a good practice, because looking at things on a day-to-day basis, sometimes it can be, for me anyway, it can be easy for me to be hard on myself if I'm looking like day to day. Did I do XYZ today? Did I do it every day? Well, what if I look at it over a week? Over a week, you can kind of like look at the average of all of the things that you did, because you have more hours in a week than you do a day. And it makes more sense to me to do it that way. At least that was helpful to me to change my mind from looking like, used to be like just like so self-critical every day. And then realizing that if I look at it from a different perspective and just look at it on like a week, or even like, you know, check in with yourself on a month. And then over time, when you look back, you see so much growth. Like if you're just like in the moment looking at just what you did that day, you're not going to see all of the growth or all of the positive things. And oftentimes we'll see the negative. And so when we take the time to reflect and look back, then that's when we can really see the growth. So I think it's important to remind ourselves to do that too, if that makes sense. So.
Great. Whose turn is it? My turn. Zulma, that's a very good question. Thank you, ladies. Your answers are really mind-blowing. And I think this conversation is getting more interesting. And having a balance is important. And not having a balance, like Brandy said, is still okay not to be okay. So to me, I am not in that mindset of getting that sort of, when it's to do with work and all the things, it's like structure and this is how things are, this is how it should be done. But now we're talking about self-care, so we can never get it into balance. And I try to be as flexible and as accommodating and as forgiving to myself, not to be so hard on myself. What I do is get information, whether that information is from the outside world or from myself. To me, I allow myself to fail, I allow myself to mess up, and I allow myself to be able to adjust to things. It doesn't have to be one size fit all, or this is what I think, this is how I do it. This is not that type. So giving myself that flexibility always is that what helps me based on what is happening, because we know ourselves. It's self-care we're talking about. And Casey, you've mentioned that it's not so much about the outside, about the spas we've been, the clothes we wear. That to me, I would say that it's more self-confidence, nothing to do with loving yourself. Loving yourself is beyond that. Sometimes we are not real to ourselves. Are you being true to yourself? Are you showing the world that you are happy? Are you showing the world that you're loving yourself? But down within yourself, you know you're not true to yourself. So to me, it's that flexibility, and to know what I am good at and what I am not good at, like acknowledging my weaknesses and my strengths, and then work towards it. Is I like what you said about having a check-in weekly and all that. It's good too. Sometimes I do it more often, daily or twice in a week or so. But more realistically, we need time to do things. Sometimes you make a plan or a routine, it doesn't work. Perhaps a week or two could give you enough time to readjust things. So what helped me get in that balance is not having the balance when it comes to the inside self-care, unless if it's something outside. So giving myself that acceptance and the flexibility to change and to acknowledge, it does definitely work for me. So I don't know about you, Zulma. The floor is yours.
That's wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for sharing the different ways in which you find balance in your lives. You mentioned so many important things, such as being flexible. Casey, recognizing what is a challenge, such as perfectionism, in the different ways in which you've overcome that. And I can relate to that a lot. I will share mine now because we are running out of time, and I know that we could continue this conversation for hours. It's an important one, and we all have so much to share and talk about that can benefit all of us. So what I've done, especially the last few years, is move away from balance. I think Sallah hit the nail on the head when she said it's like a tightrope. And if you think about walking on a tightrope, it's causes anxiety. So we don't want to do anything that can take us into that space. Therefore, for me, what I've done is change the word balance, or trying to find that balance, into what I call self-regulation. Right? And a lot of the tools that we've talked about, that we've used, that's what their intention is to help us self-regulate. I came down with a bug this week. My body needed to self-regulate, right? And it needed 3 to 4 days to be able to do that. Sometimes that looks different. It may be that my body needs self-regulation and self-care in that sense. So that's what we tend to. Sometimes maybe all 3 of them at the same time. So I think one thing that we all have in common was when we talked about tending to the inner Sallah, the inner Casey, the inner Brandy, the inner Zulma. That's where self-regulation happens, because we're talking about the care that especially our central nervous system needs, which is at the core of all those things that can throw us out of balance, right? So instead of thinking like, what do I need to be in balance? That's going to be a challenge. So what are the things that I need to self-regulate today? It could be a delicious meal. It could be a visit to the massage therapist or your chiropractor. It could be a yoga class, whatever it may be. My hope is that you find and identify what that is for you today, to self-regulate into peacefulness and love and all these higher vibrating emotions that makes us happy, because that's what we're here, right? To talk about the things that ultimately can make us happy. Anything anyone wants to add? We have 3 minutes.
I just want to thank each and every one of you for coming on and having this conversation and being open. As you know, it was mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, it can be very vulnerable to, you know, be so open and speak about your self-care, or even acknowledge that, you know, you need it or that you practice self-care. Because, you know, as you mentioned, Zulma, people, you know, feel that it could be selfish at times to practice self-care. So the fact that all of you came on here this morning and were so open to sharing your experiences really says a lot to me, as the type of people you are individually, as well as the type of coaches that you are when working with the community. And I cannot wait for our next conversation.
Casey?
Yeah, I think I really love hearing everybody's different experiences, because I mean, that's what makes, you know, we are all here together and we have so many things in common, but at the same time, we have our own unique experiences. And I really enjoy sharing and hearing all of your different experiences. So thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. And our goal is also that our Vino and Vision community get to know us on a more personal level. We are your coaches. We're here to facilitate and help any way we can. We are going to continue these coach talks. Next time we'll go a little into more detail about how coaching helps us do all these wonderful things we are doing, because that's what brought us together, and how we function as coaches in our day-to-day, and also how we put into practice those tools that we share with our clients and with those in our community is very important to all of us. And as Vino and Vision coaches who understand the importance of being able to do this in a very creative way, it's also a passion of mine. So we'll definitely dive deep into that next month. We'll have a new theme. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will see you next month.
Thank you, everybody.